Hey guys, it's Neil, and this one is going to be a fun video. I'm going to be giving you 10 tips to make your video ads a lot more engaging. Now, if you haven't already subscribed to the YouTube channel, please do so now because it means a lot to the team and I. We're putting out a ton of content when it comes to YouTube ads, so you're gonna wanna make sure that you are tuned in, subscribed, so you're getting all those notifications. So without further ado, let's talk about how we can get your boring and unengaging ads to turn into some of the most watched and highly engaging ads out there. So these are going to be tips that you can use in your editing and post-production of your ads that add a little bit of spice to them to get them to be a lot more engaging. So let's get into it. Tip number one isn't an actual tangible tip, but it is a principle that I want you guys to start applying. Now, this principle is going to dictate all of the rest of the tips. And this tip I'm going to borrow from Parker Wallback and what he has classified as the 10-second rule. So the 10-second rule basically states that every 10 seconds of your video, you want something happening that re-engages the viewer's attention. And this has to be every 10 seconds throughout the rest of the video. So whatever it is, whether you are panning or inserting B-roll, you want to make sure that you're doing this every 10 seconds to re-engage the viewer's attention. And with that, let's jump into the second tip when it comes to getting your ads to be more engaging. Now, this tip is all about B-roll. Now, if you aren't using B-roll in your ads, you need to start doing this ASAP. Now, this can be used with the first rule that I just said. And anytime you think your video is turning a little bit boring, a little bit dry, throw in some B-roll, either to illustrate a point or emphasize on a point, or just to keep attention, right? B-roll is stuff that you've shot that is outside of your primary camera. And if you don't have multiple cameras set up, you can also use stock footage, right? This is a great example of B-roll. So you can use, royalty-free stock footages. There's a few different sites out there, obviously Shutterstock being one of them. And artgrid.io is another common one where you can definitely grab these stock footages, but make sure you are using them to really illustrate and bring emphasis in your videos. Now, the third tip that I want to give you guys has to do with transitions. Now, this isn't going to apply to every single ad out there, especially if it's one take, but if you are doing multiple takes within your ads, especially if you're panning between people or you're doing interviews or you're sharing case studies or results and testimonials, you're going to want to use fun and engaging transitions. This could be whooshes, this could be little fade-ins, anything like that that really engages people's attention. Now, this is pretty simple enough, and this is a cornerstone to video editing in general, but I do think this has a big effect on ads, especially when you are going between scenes. So make sure that your transitions are a little bit more creative and dynamic. Now, the fourth effect, and this might be my favorite, is adding sound effects, right? Now, pretty often you see YouTube ads with absolutely no sound design, and it bothers me because there's so much that you can do with sound that really engages people's attention, right? Especially in ads, especially within the first 5 seconds of an ad in the hook period where you really need to grab somebody's attention. So what I recommend is adding sound effects, especially when you're making important points. You can have big sound effects for emphasis like this, and then you could also have sound effects for when you're showing testimonials, maybe images or reviews about your product or service. Then they can slap on like 1, 2, 3, or they can be totally unrelated to the points or things popping up on the screen, and they can actually work in conjunction to the previous two tips that I gave you, which was using sound design with B-rolls as well as transition. Check out this transition with sound design. Now, this brings me to the fifth tip on this video, and it still has to do with audio. Often enough, people are just shooting YouTube ads and just posting them out there without much audio design like we just discussed. The other thing you guys can start doing is adding background music. Now, we've split tested this a bunch, and we found that ads generally with background music do perform a little bit better. Now, this may not be the case for every single ad out there, but the general trend is that background musics definitely add to your ad experience, right? Ad watching experience. So what you're gonna wanna do is pick music, background music, one that is not overpowering and that like totally doesn't distract from the actual video, but two, actually sets the tone and moves the mood of the video forward. What do I mean by this? So if you are making an ad about a big transformation, right? Maybe you're talking about how people can get motivated with life. So you're gonna wanna choose really intense, epic, and uplifting background music to really emphasize the points that you're making on video. I've even seen ads where people are advertising something pretty intense and they use heavy metal rock music to really bring emphasis on the video. You can really play around here and see what suits your video, but the main thing that you're focusing on is making sure that the mood of the video, the actual feeling that somebody gets from watching your ad, is elevated with background music. Point number 6 has to do with images and overlays. Now, these are things that you add on your videos on the side, like here, basically to emphasize what you're saying. Obviously, you can go in a multitude of directions with this, but what I recommend is using these images to make a point, maybe add a little bit of humor or add emphasis on something, right? So you're going to want to add images with conjunction to some sound effects, right? To really boost up whatever you're saying on screen. Now, this can be for things like adding reviews and testimonials. Those are very common when it comes to YouTube ads, but these are going to be great, and you can do this every 10 seconds to really re-engage somebody's attention. Now, this could even look like as far as the John Oliver show, if you guys have seen that, where he uses images to really emphasize points. Now, that is a really good tip to re-engage somebody's attention with a photo or an overlay. Keeping with the same theme, the next tip has to do with graphics and more importantly, words and overlays. So these can be words or actual written graphics that also emphasize your points. So this can be things like arrows at the end of CTAs, or if I'm really trying to make a point, actual words. Now, this isn't captions, this is actually using big letters to really emphasize what you're saying. This is really going to keep the viewer engaged as well as emphasize your points. Simple enough, let's move on to the next tip. So the next tip also has a little bit to do with words. This one's pretty simple. It is adding captions to your videos. Now, captions are super important because, well, they help the viewer understand your ad. Maybe you have an accent, maybe you're recording outside and the audio isn't as crisp. So you're gonna wanna use captions to kind of mitigate those issues. Also, keep in mind, sometimes when people watch ads, whether it's desktop or mobile, they may have their devices on mute. Captions allow your point to get across despite all of these shortcomings. So just make sure that you guys have captions in all of your ads. We've seen that this has made a huge impact, especially on mobile ads. So you're gonna wanna make sure that you are starting to incorporate this within your YouTube ads. So the 9th tip that I wanna give you guys is a little technical, and it has to do with the principles of cinematography. So you're going to want to change up your framing, your panning throughout the video. The easiest way to do this is to zoom in when you're trying to make a point. Obviously, you can play around with this and see how you do it. If you have multiple cameras, this would be a great addition to really play around with different scenes and framing. But basically, you want to vary all of your shots, your framing enough throughout the video so that it seems like it's different takes, right? A lot of different cuts so that it keeps the viewer's attention. Now, you want to stay away from a lot of short, choppy jump cuts. Obviously, this is a little annoying, but you do want to use a few jump cuts, especially when you were making points of emphasis. An example of that would be right here. I'm making this separate cut to make emphasis on this exact point. So you can start employing those types of framing techniques to really make important points in your videos. Now let's jump into the last tip, and I think this one's gonna be a big one. So the 10th and final tip that I have for you guys has to do with your call to actions. Now in your ads, I've noticed a lot of people are still not doing this, even though this is one of the most common practices with YouTube ads. It's to include graphics and little arrows and timers in your call to action. So the reason you're making a YouTube ad is for somebody to click on a link. Unless it's a branding campaign, of course, we won't get into that, but for most ads, I would say like 95% of ads, especially if you're watching this channel, you want somebody that's watching the ad to click on the link. And in order for them to click on the link, you are going to have to nudge them a little bit. And you can do this with things like arrows. Obviously, that's why you see on a lot of YouTube ads, people include those arrows, because it really does work and it really does increase engagement as well as click-through rates. So you're gonna wanna make sure that you're using arrows. What we've also seen work, and again, this is something you can split test for yourself, is adding a timer for the call to action. Something like a slide scale or even like a clocked countdown timer has shown to increase click-through rates. So that's something you can also test out. Well guys, that's it for this video. I hope you guys can take those 10 tips and start applying them in your videos. Hopefully your video ads start looking a little bit better. They're a lot more engaging and their click-through rates start going up higher. If you like this sort of content and you want to accelerate your journey with YouTube ads, you want to learn how to make really highly effective YouTube ads and how to target well, what I recommend for you is to check out this video on our coaching program. Now, this is something that we've put together that helps people that are completely new at YouTube ads and turn them into masters when it comes to YouTube ads. So if you want more information, just click the link in the description and it'll take you to a page where you learn everything about this coaching program, everything including how much it costs, what's included, who teaches it, what all is going on, everything that you would want to know. Again, if you want more information on that, be sure to check the link in the description. And if you haven't already, give this video a thumbs up. It really means a lot to us, and subscribe to the channel. And with that, I'll see you guys in the next video.